And welcome back, everybody. Last week on CNN, FBI counterterrorism head John Steinbeck was asked if any sleeper cells existed in the United States.
There are individuals that have been in communication with groups like ISIL who have a desire to conduct an attack, yes.
That are living in the U.S. right now.
Correct.
And yesterday on CNN's State of the Union, Homeland Security Secretary, Jay Johnson, doubled down, saying law enforcement is very involved in tracking down suspected domestic terrorists.
The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security do a pretty good job of tracking the travel of individuals of suspicion of investigating potential acts of terror or material support to terrorism. Just this past Friday, there were arrests of 5 individuals who were providing material support allegedly to ISIL.
Now I'm joined by former special agent for the FBI and now CEO of United States Continued Services, LLC. Jonathan T. Gilliam joins us. John, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Be here with you. Thank you for having me.
So, John, 2 questions. First, how serious of a threat are we facing? And do you believe that there is, or are, I should say, ISIS sleeper cells in the United States ready to attack right now?
Well, I know definitely there are people who are inspired. I mean, we know without a doubt there are people who have been inspired by ISIS that are here. We know that there are people that have been inspired by fundamental Mohammedanism that live here in the United States. Whether or not there are sleeper cells or there are operatives that have actually been shipped over here or who have been covertly moved over here, that is something that I personally do not know. But I will tell you, if there is actually sleeper cells, that they discover a cell, there will be immediate action that's acted upon. I think, though, the biggest thing that I have a problem with is that we've allowed ourselves to get to a position now where we are reacting versus acting. And that is a big problem. It's also an example of how badly we have fought in the war on terror since 2001.
So are these attacks preventable? Do you believe that Homeland Security and the FBI have a handle on the situation?
Well, they have a handle on what they know, but see, it's the what they don't know that's the real problem. That's where the real sleeper cells exist. And that is where the Muslim community can help, although I doubt that that's going to happen, because the pressure for them to not say something or to not be involved is actually the greatest hindrance that we have. You know, to serve and to protect, that's what's on the side of most police cars. But it doesn't say that we can be, and law enforcement can be everywhere at all times. So the Muslim population really does have to step up to the plate. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing if we can have a breakthrough there that will make a difference.
And intelligence certainly is the key, and lone wolves are certainly a problem, particularly if they're acting alone, if they're willing to give their own lives. How do you prevent something like that? That's certainly the scary part. Meanwhile, the president seems to think that the only reason the media is spending so much time covering ISIS is because of, get this, ratings.
Do you think the media sometimes overstates the sort of level of alarm people should have about terrorism and this kind of chaos as opposed to a longer term problem of climate change and epidemic disease?
Absolutely. And, you know, I don't blame the media for that. You know, what's the famous saying about local newscasts, right? If it bleeds, it leads, right? You show crime stories and you show fires, because that's what folks watch. It's all about ratings.
Post-presidency, Jonathan, perhaps he could be an executive producer somewhere, because he certainly knows what's working on television. You know, he says he never watches it. Anyway, are we getting upset about nothing? In other words, is the media blowing, as the president indicates, that the threat of terrorism and the war on ISIS is just something that's being blown out of proportion?
Well, the president and his crew are experts at getting elected and running for election, and they continue to run for election. What they don't do well at all is fight a war or fight a specific unconventional war like the one on terror. All we have to do is look overseas at who's threatening us, how they're threatening us, and what they're doing to the hostage that they do take. You combine that with the things that have happened in Australia, in Canada, and over in Paris, you're going to start to see the same thing can happen here. It's logistically a little bit harder to get those operatives over here, but once they have them here, you have things like the Boston Marathon. And I think a big thing that I've talked about before is that, you know, if they just went in and hit a mall you're going to see things change in this country. They're going to be affected greatly. A mall is where the middle America goes on the weekends, and I think that's going to have a huge impact, and it's going to start to bring things home. And these are the types of people who can do something like this.
I think you're right, John. And you brought up Boston. That's a great example of not too many deaths, obviously. People were maimed, many people injured, but the psychological effects of just a couple of bombs going off at a major event like that, or some sort of gun attack in any mall around the country. Again, the spread of fear and everything that we would see in the media certainly would have an effect there. So we appreciate you joining us, John. Thanks so much again.
You got it. Thank you.
Okay, well, it's time to bring in our panel. We have attorney Heather Hanson here today, Forbes columnist Rick Unger, and author and Huffington Post columnist Jenny Crumpton. Rick, your reaction?
Well, look, in the world of CNN, every bit of news is breaking news. But the truth is, this is not breaking news. We've known of sleeper cells for quite some time. Jonathan and I actually carry on this conversation quite a bit. I disagree with him on many things. I do agree with him, however, that this whole attack of a shopping mall could be the most devastating thing we could face.
Heather.
That's absolutely the case. But the media does deal in fear. And I think Obama's point in that interview was to say that, okay, we can have fear, but we also have to have some positive change, that we can't just deal in fear. And especially when it comes to dealing with these things, we have to find a more effective way than just to run around like chickens with their heads cut off.
Yeah. Jenny?
Yeah, counterterrorism strategy 101 is don't tell on television what intelligence you have. I live right by Grand Central, and every day I wake up and go to sleep knowing that that's a high-level target for terrorists in New York City. But I know that authorities in New York City have a very good handle on counterterrorism. And so what good is it going to do to panic, to fearmonger? And I agree with you. I think, Heather, that President Obama is really just trying to keep things calm and under control, because panic is exactly what ISIS wants us to do.
No, you're certainly right about New York City having a handle on things here. It's been now 14 years since 9/11, right. And there have been some attempted attacks, obviously at Times Square just a couple of years ago, but so far, at least here in New York, so good. I'm just wondering, it's a matter of when and not if. Anyway, we got to go to commercial. Sorry about that, Jenny. Coming up next, Chief Justice Roy Moore of Alabama feels judges in his state are not bound by a federal ruling that shot down the state's ban on gay marriage. Others agree with him. We'll let you know more after the break. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV.